Hi, everyone. In the previous message, I spoke about how we as Christians should be thinking of the whole stewardship idea as of, stewarding God's property. It's God's property and it's not ours. If it's ours, then we have plans of what to do with it. But if it's God's, then we seek God about what we should do with his property. And as stewardship, we're entrusted to take care of exactly what he owns, which is everything. So I spoke about, just renewing our mind in the aspect that everything is his. It's not ours. And it depends on how we want to focus. Are we going to focus from the position of the flesh and the Adamic mindset? Or are we going to change that and, rather to choose to live under the mind of Christ? And, if God tells us, hey, I want you to give a certain amount to this, homeless person or somebody in need, or hey, I want you to go to a GoFundMe page and I want you to bless somebody that is in need there, or, go to this certain church, whatever it might be, however God's going to instruct. And if we put up a fight, then it shows that, it's not, we're not stewarding it for God. We're stewarding it for ourselves. So therefore, we're claiming the money that we work for as ours. And how many Christians say that they're doing it for God, but really they're not. It's only by name only. So in that video message, I more or less wanted to switch the mindset from the way the world does things to the way the kingdom should operate. So God gave me the idea about, stewarding. It's not about wealth or anything, but it's stewarding of relationships. So my question to anybody that's watching this video, and it's probably Christians, my question is, how do we treat each other? Do we treat each other with a lack of respect, a lack of care, a lack of love? Or do we just love one another? That's the question that I want to set before you, to have you think about. So once again, the title of this video is called Stewarding of Relationships. Now, it says in Psalm 24, verse 1, that the earth is the Lord's and everything in it, the world and all who live in it. Now, those who don't know God, of course, they're going to live the way they usually do. They're going to take examples of the people that are around them. If somebody is walking, eating something, and they have a wrapper around it, once they're done with what they're eating, they take it and throw it on the ground. Or, just show a lack of respect for what God has created. Now, I'm not talking about being a tree hugger or anything like that. But it's always should be before us, to show great care for what we have, what God has given us. I mean, we don't want to be like ungrateful kids to where a parent would get us something nice and then we take it and destroy it. That wouldn't be good, So likewise, yes, we should, show respect for what he's done and for this world to be in awe of what he's done. So those who don't know God, of course, will not acknowledge the truth of relationships, the importance of them, how, one person can touch another. If anything, they get bitter towards somebody, they get offended, and in that offense, they hate the person. They don't want nothing to do with them. So whether it's respecting God's creation, the earth, and, respecting each other, of course, those of the world aren't going to acknowledge that truth for various reasons, being atheists, agnostics, or whatever it might be. They won't acknowledge that truth until God brings them to, a certain time in their life where they will acknowledge. So we as Christians, we don't show the same lack of respect that many in the world do. Why is that? It's because that we have to answer to God. One day we're going to have to give an account to Him of why we have treated somebody the wrong way. And I'll get into that eventually about the various ways that we can mistreat somebody. Now, those who are of God are aware of how they are treating somebody. If they're showing a lack of respect, it's got to be God that shows them, because, are they going to be humble enough to receive, correction? Or if they are humble enough to receive correction, then, God has made that person wise. So how many believers see each other as God's property? How many treat each other with a lack of respect? How many are not grateful for them? Any kind of relationship, mother, father, daughter, son, grandparents, whoever it might be, friendships. Do we take what we have for granted? Are we not grateful for them, for God bringing them into our lives? Because whether, somebody is acting negatively or whatever, God uses that for His glory, and it's to mold us into the person that He wants us to be. We're to be molded into the image of Jesus, but we can't be molded if we're not willing to submit to God's molding. We're not willing to submit to our potter. So I want to take this even further. I have already mentioned about showing, gratefulness for what God has given us, whether sons, daughters, wives, husbands, whatever it might be. But let's take it even further. Do you appreciate your spouse in the marriage? Do you show gratefulness for the strength that God has given them to get up and go to their job, to work hard, and, to try to make ends meet? Are you appreciative of who they are in Christ? Are you appreciative of their character? Of course, every marriage has negatives. I'm not saying that they don't. But God uses the negative for His glory. We may not like the feeling of what is going on, disagreements or whatnot. But as I will be speaking about, is that every disagreement is an opportunity to show your light and to show your love for Christ. I want to bring it even further. Life is so uncertain in these days. A person's living one day and then they're gone the next. I think about, my mom and dad, and how my dad was here one day and then because of, lung cancer, he was gone the next. And so, we don't ever want to live with regret. We need to always watch what we say. We need to watch what we do. We need to appreciate the person that is with us, that God has given to us. And, don't focus on the negative. Always focus on the positive. Look at all the things that your spouse has and what they've done, and focus on the positive, never on the negative. Because if you're always going to focus on the negative, all you're going to see is negative. You're never going to see the positive. Or how about any other relationships that may be in the body of Christ, whether you don't like somebody, so therefore you gossip, you tear them down to somebody else, and then so you have two people against the person for whatever reason. It could be something that's innocent or misunderstanding or whatever. But, all things can be worked out through Christ. It just takes the initiative to take a step forward and, self-deny our pride, give up our pride, and walk towards Jesus and work everything out through love. Because, our mortal coil will be shed one day, and we're going to be living by the Spirit in heaven, and we're not going to deal with any negative anymore. And we're then going to acknowledge the truth of how we acted on earth. And I'll get to that soon. So under the title of what I've already been speaking about, how many believers see each other as God's property, do we serve each other? What can we do to serve our spouses? What can we do to serve our friends, our family, each member of our family? God has given us the opportunity to do such. So are we going to be willing to take that? So in heaven, we won't have the baggage that we do now. We'll see, in quote, unquote, what we've done wrong. We'll acknowledge the mistakes that we've made. And I think about, Jesse Duplantis. If you've never read his book or seen his video, it's Close Encounters of the God Kind. God gave Jesse Duplantis a visit to heaven. And so he saw many of the biblical characters, David, he saw Jesus, and he saw Jonah. He made a joke to Jonah saying something about the whale. And so I guess Jonah and him talked, and Jonah had, I wouldn't say he had the guilt of it, because there's no negative, there's no tears or anything there. But he acknowledged the fact that he ran away from God's calling. So, in like manner, if we don't work out any issues that are on earth, we're going to later acknowledge the fact that we didn't live as we should on earth. Because earth is, we're here momentarily, and then our home is up in heaven. So we're given an opportunities to become like Christ down here on earth. So are we going to be willing to, walk like Jesus walked? In heaven, there won't be any pride that anybody has. There's not going to be any kind of negative there. There's not going to be any kind of evil, but it's working through love. I heard through Jesse Duplantis that, even the highest ups, the kings, would serve people. And Jesse was talking about that. King David asked him, "What can I do for you?" So, in like manner, why not start practicing it here on earth? To be the lights that we need to be. And if you've seen my other messages, I speak about how believers, maybe some will shine their light to a certain extent, but a majority of the time, believers focus entirely on this world, and so they momentarily put their lights under a basket and follow, success in this world. So, in closing, what can we do now on earth to change? Why have regret? Why walk in regret while we're on earth? Make the most of every opportunity, because the days are evil. That's what the Apostle Paul said. We have given it amazing opportunities, even though we don't want to. Jesus said, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Why ask us to do something that is so hard? It's because that's what he did. That's how he walked out. When, somebody hit him on the cheek, he turned the other one also. He practiced what he preached. Everything that came out of Jesus' mouth, he lived by. So in like manner, we need to make, every opportunity an opportunity to become like Christ. We need to keep in mind that each person is God's property. So before we would backbite or say anything bad or, trash them or, we need to watch how and what we do and not even take a step in that direction, but to always take a step in love. And last one is, like I said, every moment is an opportunity to make a change for the good. So whenever you're facing a negative circumstance with somebody or something, and you can remember this message, stop yourself and ask the Lord, Lord, what do you want me to do in this situation? How can I be a light in this situation for your glory? And, I believe when we can start, getting the habit of stopping ourselves before we would walk in the negative, we can do so much good. So I'm going to end it here. I pray this video has blessed you. Thanks for taking the time to watch.